it's this idea of taking imperfect action, just 1% better every day. And, what can you do today and to have a better, version than you'd had yesterday. Like I have this one of these intentions and affirmations I do every morning. And it's just like, today is better than yesterday and tomorrow will be better than today. So, but you have to actively do something as well. You can't just like sit there on the cushion and expect. Yeah. It's some of it is affirmations and law of attraction stuff, but you actually have to do the things and put yourself out of your comfort zone and invest in yourself.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. I'm Mike Deaton.
And I'm Lygia Deaton. Together as co-hosts in life, business, and this podcast, we're matching up the heavyweights of cash flow creation to see who reigns supreme.
We do this so you can discover the best way for you to generate transformational cash flow and pursue the life of your dreams. So whether you're a side hustle seeker, full-time entrepreneur, or just looking to create job-quitting cash flow like we did, hit subscribe and grab your ringside seat for the most entertaining and informative investing show on the airwaves. Let's get in the arena.
Let's do it.
Are you ready to rumble?
I am very much looking forward to today's matchup.
Me too. So today on the podcast, we have two very similar yet different business models facing off in the Cash Flow Fight Club arena. One, a digital product business, going up against a successful podcast and podcaster. Becky Beach started a small blog almost 10 years ago. And after years of neglect and thinking about the fact that she should give it more attention, she finally took action. After a short time, she took Mom Beach, her small blog, grew its readership, added offerings for her readers, and has now sold over $1 million in digital products. $1 million in digital products. Not to mention, she also gets revenue through advertising and affiliates on her blog. She is now running a force and expanding into other domains and services. It's a super impressive story. And facing off against Becky and her digital products empire is a top podcast in its niche. Harry Duran, not to be confused with Roberto, at least I don't think so, got interested in podcasting after time in the corporate world and bouncing around a few other jobs. He wisely decided to go very niche when launching his podcast in order to stand out, be an authority, and enable growth. His niche? Vertical farming. Now, Harry interviews CEOs and executives in the field. He gets tapped to speak at relevant conferences as far as Dubai. He also commands top sponsorship dollars for his show. He's also growing his business into other areas to continue his expansion strategy and leverage his success. A formidable opponent.
This episode has so much to offer entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, and business people in general. We discuss how to pick a business and niche, growth and scale, leveraging outsourced talent, monetization, and so much more.
This is an awesome episode. Let's jump into the arena and get this matchup started. All right, Becky Beach, Harry Duran, thank you both for coming on the show today. We're excited to hear more about your business models.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So just to recap the way the show works, we'll divide this up into 3 rounds. Round 1, we'll get to know a bit more about your personal background. Round 2, we'll jump into your business model. And then round 3, we'll have a little more detailed questions about some of your business models. And then Lygia and I will confer and we'll pick a champion and close the show. So we are excited to get started.
And in round 3, gloves come off. So you can get at each other as much as you want to.
Yeah, spirited debate or not. So feel free.
Or not.
Yeah.
Well, ladies first, Becky, why don't we start with you? Give us a bit about your personal background and your story and how you got to the world of digital products before that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, like I started doing an online business when I was pregnant with my son, Brian. And I was working like a 60-hour-a-week job as a contractor at a healthcare company. And I was just really stressed out. And they weren't going to give me any paid leave. I had actually budget to be able to take off 3 months
Wow.
of maternity leave, so it was like really, really awful time. And I was really stressed out and I think I just got to do something. I can't live like this. So I decided to start my blog, Mom Beach. And I just kept, posting every single week, every here and there. But I didn't really get serious about it until Brian was like 3 years old, and I had another boss, that was like making me cry. He would do like one-on-ones. I would cry in the office, or I'll go out and cry in the car or cry in the bathroom. It was just a miserable time. And I was like, I gotta stop having these bosses. I'm like getting the awful asshole bosses, what's going on here? Like every boss I'm getting is this big asshole. So I said, I gotta do something. I can't, keep living like this. So I decided to get serious with the blog, and I started taking blogging courses. Like I went on YouTube, and also bought some courses that for people that I was following. I joined like Facebook groups, and I was really starting to get into it. And like my traffic, started creeping up, and I was earning like $1 a month at first. And I told my brother-in-law that I was earning that much. He goes, "Oh, don't quit your day job." He started laughing, and everybody was telling me I need to focus on my 9 to 5. That was killing me. Like I have a disability. I can't keep working those 9 to 5 jobs. It was just killing me. So I said, I gotta stop this, So eventually I started making like $10,000 a month. And then I was able to quit my job.
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
Wow.
That's great. So, okay. Yeah. And, it sounds like you just kept going at it. I don't know what kind of time period from the time you started your blog till you started till you were able to leave your 9 to 5. Was that?
Well, I started the blog back in 2015, but I didn't really get serious about it until 2018. It was more of a hobby, but until then. And then over COVID, it just skyrocketed. And then I was making like $30,000 a month because of all the traffic.
Yeah.
And so I left my job 2 years ago.
Okay, great. Wow. That's awesome. Mr. Duran, how about you?
So I would say I was in corporate for almost 20 years. I worked at JP Morgan Chase and E-Trade and their marketing departments. And so I was doing the 9 to 5 grind for a long time, ever since I, was in college and I got my first job where I got to wear a suit. I figured I had made it at that point.
Yeah.
Which everyone thinks, when you get to wear a suit, you get to dress up. I grew up in New York, so I was commuting into the city, and I was just would go in and out of trying things. When the .com craze came, I jumped out of the corporate world for a while, did that, came back, that didn't work out. And then at one point I even left to go work in construction, of all things, with my half brother in Atlanta. And so literally hard hats, scaffolding, climbing, taking off blueprints. So just kind of always, so it feels like there was always a pull to do something that wasn't related to 9 to 5. And then around 2013, my consulting job was winding down. I have a passion for electronic music. So I grew up DJing vinyl and turntables. And I built a mobile app with a friend of mine called Know Your DJ. And I wanted to learn how to promote it through a podcast. So I went to a podcast conference in 2014, New Media Expo in Las Vegas. I showed up with the idea for this shirt that you see right here is Podcast Junkies. This is my first show. So that's where I got the idea. I pivoted. Rather than try to interview DJs, which was my first idea, I figured how hard it would be to get into contact with them. So I said, look at all these podcasters. Let me interview them. And I started Podcast Junkies. So Super Meta, it's a podcast where I interview other podcasters. But I did everything myself that first year, and I really immersed myself in the world of podcasting. And then similar to that same time frame of 2015, I started my agency. I'd hired a business coach. Really, one of these quotes that stood out for me was, you are the Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And coming out of corporate, realizing I didn't know anything about digital marketing, nothing about, lead magnets, all these things you learn now that I know now. But I had to figure out, someone to help me with that learning curve. So I invested in myself, and, I think I was paying $1,500 a month for a coach, which at the time, coming from corporate, was a lot, but I realized I needed them to accelerate me to get me to the point where I knew what I didn't know. And so just being in that deep water of these 6-figure, 7-figure entrepreneurs really elevated my game. And I've heard my coach say that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not in the right room. So I realized, just how I needed to change that. And so that's how I started the agency, Fullcast. I mean, we're a full service done for you agency. We've produced over 120 shows. But those two things together led me in 2019, one of my clients had given me a book called Abundance by Peter Diamandis, and it talks about all these things happening in the future, and vertical farming was one of those things. So I said, oh, this is an interesting industry. It's growing. There's VC money coming in, which in my marketing mind equals marketing dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I had experience with long form interviews, at that point I had done over 250 interviews in my show, I was comfortable interviewing CEOs and founders, and that was the target audience I selected for the show. I called it what it says on the label, Vertical Farming Podcast. The domain was available. I was making it drop dead simple for people to find because I knew that people wanted to find a show about vertical farming. Those are the 3 words they would Google. And so if you Google those 3 words, vertical farming and podcast, it's the first thing that shows up in Google.
Sure.
And then I didn't want people to, no one knew who I was in the space. And so I said, let's interview CEOs and founders, because when people look back at those, the past guests, they'll see, oh, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person. And so in 3 years, it's been a wild journey. It's the number 1 show in the industry. It's generated over $80,000 in sponsorship revenue from companies that I'm working with. And my sponsors have flown me to cities like Dubai last year and Germany this year to attend indoor farming conferences as well. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. So many great takeaways there. I mean, something you said really stood out to me for both of you is and something we always say, anytime you're making the leap, especially if you're going from a corporate world or a 9-to-5 or a W-2 type job into entrepreneurship, it's so important to invest in yourself, whether that's a coach or a mentor or a group or a product or things like that. I mean, it's there's no need to reinvent the wheel in a lot of cases. There's so many people that have been down the path and done the things, and you can accelerate your growth. We did the same thing when we shifted from corporate to our real estate ventures. We found coaches and mentors and people that could accelerate our journey. Also immerse yourself in, along with those came a community of other people, like-minded people that were having success and doing things. So yeah, great takeaways, and something I encourage any listener to do.
Right. And I really want to say something about after Becky, when you shared your story, it really resonates with me, because many times when we go through hard time and hard periods where we are dissatisfied with what we do, that's a blessing in disguise, then we are forced to figure out what's my next step, because this is miserable. Like, I don't want to stay here. I want to move on. So
yeah, that's so true. Harry, let's stay with you. You kind of started getting into your business already. So vertical farming, tell us a bit more about it. So you mentioned the podcast aspect. Yeah. Is it only the podcast, or do you have other products as well, or services?
Yeah. So it's interesting. When I was doing the research about that industry, I really was looking at it because I had the skill sets, like I mentioned, long form interviews. I was comfortable speaking, and people, that's one of the questions people asked. They said, how do you have conversations about vertical farming on a topic that you really don't know a dollar about, and you're speaking to CEOs? They're just conversations. Everyone, they all put their pants on one leg at a time, and I really humanize them, and I just tell their origin stories. And so, which I'm comfortable doing. And now between both shows, I'm over 400 plus long form interviews. So it's really just asking open-ended questions, being naturally curious. And before you know it, the time has gone by. And I've had some of my guests say, wow, that flew by so quickly. Yes. Like I feel like I want to give you a hug. And so, you can really go deep if you've got a good, connection.
For sure.
And then in terms of the model, I said, this is an industry that's growing. When companies get funded, and I was looking at sites like Crunchbase, where I could see like the funding rounds, that they get their seed round, that they get their A round. And I did a lot of pre-work ahead of time. I put a lot of that information into Airtable. So I was tracking everything. And I said, okay, these are the companies that I want to go after. And these are the companies that just got funded, and they might have an opportunity to, use those first dollars would likely go to marketing. And so I was positioning it in a way. And in the beginning, you don't have a lot of downloads because it's a new show. So I was positioning my platform and my reach. I said, this is what I've done with my first show. This is what I've done with our agency. This is who we're reaching out to. And I did grab all the socials, Vertical Farm Pod, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, because I was building this platform. And that's what I'm offering to the sponsors. It's the platform approach, not this idea of just one read on a podcast episode, but really when I land a new sponsor, I'm on my personal LinkedIn saying, hey, thanks, for Cultivated is one of my previous sponsors. Thank you so much for being a sponsor of the show. I really value our relationship and our partnership. So they really see that I'm going above and beyond. And then as I was thinking about creating this platform, I knew because it's so niche that I should probably keep an eye on other things to do that are ancillary that could cross-reference. So I grabbed verticalfarmingjobs.com, verticalfarmingweekly.com. CEA, which is Controlled Environment Agriculture, CEA.events for events. And so I was thinking about ways we send out a weekly newsletter. And so what's happened recently is because I'm being connected to other people in the space. As of a couple of weeks ago, I merged the vertical farming aspect of the production, which is Vertical Farming Media LLC, with this other company called iGrow News, which does newsletters. And so we've merged forces now, and we've called it the AgTech Media Network. And now we're thinking bigger now, because so now we're joining forces, and that wouldn't have been possible had I not started the show and built those relationships.
Sure. I guess, so when I think of vertical farming, I'm thinking from a consumer aspect, like me as a consumer, having a product where I can grow, something off a wall
Leafy
or
greens,
a fence or something. But it sounds like you're even broader than that, because I guess on an industrial scale, you can also vertically farm. And that when you're talking CEOs and other things like that, I guess there are larger scale companies that are really looking to, I don't know if I want to say transform the agricultural industry, but at least capitalize in a different lane than traditional farming. So it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, they're big companies. There's companies like Plenty, Aero Farms, Gotham Greens, and I've interviewed their CEOs. And so it's interesting to hear, a lot of them are creating large scale farms on a specific, you don't need as much land. And also you're not susceptible to the different environmental conditions. But also there's aspects to consider with energy costs, because obviously these are very energy intensive applications. So in places where energy is cheap, one of my previous guests is growing algae in Iceland because they're tapping into the geothermal vents there for their energy. So it's really fascinating, because I'm learning along the way. There's people growing everything from insects indoors to animal fodder to hops for beer, a company Ekanoki in Spain. So just so interesting to see. And I think with what happened with COVID and then things like the Ukraine war, you really see this coming to the forefront with supply chain disruptions, access to local foods. I was in Dubai last year. They get 95% of their food imported. So it's really top of mind for a lot of folks. So I couldn't have planned it that way, but the timing in terms of interest in that industry is really picking up.
Interesting. Yeah, let's put a pin in that for a second. And then, Becky, we can pivot over to you, because it sounds like your model is not too terribly different at a high level, right? From niching into something and then growing a bit and capitalizing on advertising and marketing and as well as a product. But
yes. Also work with sponsors too, just like Harry does. Like recently I partnered with Amazon. Like they wanted me to debut their new shipping app on my blog, because my blog helps moms make and save money and start a business. So I recently did a sponsored post for them.
That's great. So let's back up a little bit, maybe, and then just kind of tell us about your digital products business and how that got started, and then we can kind of get to where it is today.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like at first, my blog, it was only making money with affiliate marketing and also ads. And affiliate, in case someone out there doesn't know, it's when you click a link and then you get paid a percent of whatever money you paid on the person's link. So then you yourself get money based on if someone else buys with your link. So I was doing that on my blog and also running ads. And I wasn't getting much money at all. Like sometimes I'm making like $100 like a month. I was like, gosh, this is crazy. I need to start making more money. Like I don't know what to do. So I just did some more courses. And then when this one course, they said, oh, you should sell printables or some products on your blog, to help. That way when people come to your blog, they can purchase something, because you're getting all this traffic from lead generation and also content marketing. So these people are coming to your blog, free traffic from Google and Pinterest. So then I started, listing digital products on my blog as a free opt-in form. I had like a printable workbook they can sign up to, and I got like 100 subscribers in like a day from just this one time, doing this. I thought, wow, I'm onto something. I need to start making more. So then I decided to open a Shopify store on my blog. And I have a link to the Shopify store. It's a self-standing store. So it links from my blog's navigation. So people go there from my blog. And also I started, promoting the store all over the blog. I even have like a little notification where they could, find a coupon on the blog. So every page they can see that notification to click to the blog, and not to the blog, but to the store. And on the first page, I got, links where you can click on to the store. And I got like sidebar, you can click on to the store, I list products. So all over the blog. is trying, it's like an advertisement for the store, because they're
Right.
going there, to get, information, based on what they searched for. The product helps them even more because I actually
Mhm.
promote the product within the blog post.
Nice. And when you came up with your product ideas, I assume that it's somehow geared toward what you felt your audience would obviously be looking for. Or did you do any like market research, or you just did some trial and error and put some things out there?
Oh, yes, I do research. Like I'll go on Etsy and also Pinterest trends. That's a great way to find content for your blog and
Mm-hmm.
also to create products around. Like this one trend was like glamping, like camping with a glamping, a glamorous camping, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was really popular on Pinterest. I thought, why don't I make a blog post about glamping? And then also I made a glamping planner where you could plan your glamping trip. So then I put that in the post to sell it. And it did really well. I got like almost viral on Pinterest. Then I started getting all these sales for the glamping planner because it was in the blog post.
Terrific. That's great.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. How many products do you have right now?
Oh, now I've ventured out into even more stores. So I have like another store that has commercial use products where people can actually, buy these products at plrbeach.com and they can resell them as their own. So now I got over like 1,000 products. Like that store has over like 700 and my Shopify store has over 100. And plus I now have an Etsy store and a Teachers Pay Teacher store, and also self-published books on Amazon. So I just try to, get all the buy buttons everywhere. The more buy buttons you have, the better,
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
That's terrific. So, and I guess so you've gone from a not an unread blog that you started back in the day to a lot of traffic to your site and really just following trends and a little bit of I'll say self-knowledge. It's not necessarily self-knowledge, but you went out and purchased some courses and kind of taught yourself some things.
Yeah. I knew nothing. I was just a web developer. I was doing web developing for 20 years. I was making mobile apps and just making websites for companies. And I knew nothing about sales or marketing, like nothing. When I was little, I couldn't even sell a box of Girl Scout cookies door to door. That's how I was just terrible at selling. So I had to teach myself all these, like anything can be learned.
Sure. Yeah, that's terrific. Both of you self-starters there. I love that. Other questions? Okay, well, it might make sense to let's transition into round 3. We'll go a little bit deeper. Harry, and so love the way you started out. Very, very niche. You had the awareness, I would say, to start expanding, and now you're leveraging into bigger and more broad things. Do you have like expenses in your business? Like what, other than obviously, I guess there's, a studio and equipment and things like that, but are there expenses? Have you built out to a team at this point where you have other people doing things?
Yeah. So a lot of interesting because of the way of my journey sort of unfolded. I started with my first show, Podcast Junkies, and then there was a lot that I didn't know about podcasting there. So I had to figure everything out, watch courses, learn about mics, learn about editing, audio, all the social media marketing, and just guerrilla tactics on how to grow a show. Like I referenced this shirt because after year 1, I made like 50 of these, and I went to a podcast conference and I would walk around with them on my shoulder, and people were like, "Oh, is that a free T-shirt?" I'm like, "Yes, all you have to do is subscribe to my show on the spot, and I'll give you one." So then I would take a selfie. So just really thinking outside of the box, but it was helpful because I was doing all the things, just trying different things on how to get sponsors, how to edit the show, how to market the show, how to promote on social media. And so that real first year was really helpful for me. So when we started the agency, essentially, these 6-figure, 7-figure earners, they know what they understand what an hour of their time is worth, right? Opportunity costs. And so I said, look, I'm going to do the things that are not your genius. And they said, oh yeah, okay. So I would package it as a done for you service. And so because of that, we have the in-house agency now. So I had the pieces in place as I was looking towards vertical farming. I said, I know how to do the interviews. We know how to produce a show. We can produce it in-house. So really I had a lot of pieces in place that may have, may be discouraging for other folks who kind of want to use specifically podcasting, but I leaned into what my expertise was. If I was a blogger, if I was a prolific writer, I would have started with newsletters are really common nowadays. It's really easy using a tool like Beehive or Substack to really quick get a niche newsletter up and running. So I had the pieces in place. And so now when we produce these shows, we're with an eye towards how we're partnering with sponsors and then how much value we can add for them after the show is produced. And just building these relationships. I now attend indoor farming conferences where I get to meet these CEOs that I've interviewed before. I shake their hands and say like, hey, Harry, like, it was really nice to meet you. I'm building those relationships. And so that database, one of the other products we're going to add now in this new merger is a directory where the companies pay, maybe $5K or $10K a year for like an annual listing on the site as a premium listing. So these are now products we can begin to think about to offer, the indoor farming community as a result of this partnership.
That's great. I love the idea of we selfishly. I'm gonna take this idea of collateral or things that you can do to get people to subscribe to the show. Really, really clever about that. Yeah, that's great. I also love the idea of, and I think this applies to almost anybody that is in some kind of an entrepreneurial space, but take your journey and productize it, right? Like, I mean, you're already doing a podcast. And so you're putting together these pieces of how to produce a podcast, right? Find guests, record, get the editing, even the marketing aspect of things, and productize all of that or some portion of it or something. We've talked about the same thing because just from having started our podcast, I think that's a genius move there as well. Even coaching, right? A lot of people do that, right? I do something for a while and I'm going to give some consulting or some coaching service because I have experience and now I have added value. I think, Becky, you do a little bit of that as well, if I remember correctly. I don't know if it's true.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I now have three businesses. I got like the Mom Beach one that's like business to customer. And I got the PLR Beach, which is like business to business. And I got the third, which is the Coach Becky Beach site. Mm-hmm. And that's like that's also business to business, but I provide coaching and do a membership and courses on how to sell printables and create products called the Business Beach Club.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Let's stay with that a little bit. So how about on yours, same question for you then, in terms of like product cost. You're selling digital products. And so I would imagine, your time or your expenses are in the form of time. I don't know if you outsource any of that to people or if you're doing it yourself, but
yes, I have people that have partnered, do contracting for me in the Philippines. As I just love working with Filipino workers. They're just like really kind and generous people, and they have really strong work ethic, and they don't charge like hundreds of dollars an hour like some people do. Like they just have very modest, charging. I just really like working with them. So I have one that's full time, and she like helps me design printables and stuff, and helps me with sales pages. And I have some others that do like they're coloring book artists, because I also sell coloring pages for commercial use, and also I self-publish coloring books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And how did you find the people that are working for you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I met them on onlinejobs.ph.
Okay.
Yes, and also some on upwork.com, but I like search for people in the Philippines specifically.
Yes.
Like a struggle with that is their time is like 14 hours ahead. So like I can only talk to her like at night, like at 10 p.m. Like that's when she starts work. And then so I really assign her tasks the day before. We use Skype to communicate, and like we use Trello for like the project management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a plus and a minus, right? I mean, definitely it's hard to directly communicate, but then while you sleep, things can be being done, and you wake up in the morning and you have your product or service. So we've enjoyed some benefits there as well.
And
just adding to that, I think I definitely agree in with Becky in terms of the finding talent in the Philippines. My team has been with me for almost 6 years. It's a brother and sister team that's been working with me. And I think what's key, and I think this is probably something that Becky has in place, but just writing clear instructions is really helpful for them. SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that they're clear. Because what I found over the years is if there's any room for ambiguity, then they get stuck and they'll stop the task, or they're not do it, or just do it the wrong way. So I always say that if they get something wrong, it's my fault because I didn't explain it to them clearly. So, and I'm sure Becky said that experience as well. But it's really helpful if you can get a good communication style. Because essentially, if you give them the instructions ahead of time, then while you're sleeping, they're working, and so you wake up and there's productivity, and productive work being done in your business overnight.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I do film videos of myself doing all the tasks, and I have it in a Google Drive for her, so she could look to see how to do each task, arranged in a folder, and there's a video in there about everything. So I do have SOPs in place. And if I were to hire somebody else, I already have a video library of how to do everything in my business.
Yeah, great tips. We're venturing into how to run an outsourced team, but yeah, those are all classic tips. I love those. It's good stuff. So a lot of businesses and or investments that we speak with, there are inherent risks to the business model. These, I feel, and I'll ask you each, maybe Becky will go with you first, but what do you see as any risks for anybody that we're going to start up a digital product type business? It seems
I'll say a risk. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it seems like it'd be fairly minimal because, the cost outlay is not, it's not huge, or unless you're using U.S. service people to outsource your work to, then you can add up some costs there. But that's all.
Yes, you're not having a brick and mortar business, like you would have to invest in a building, and then you got to actually have hire people and give them benefits, and pay for workers' comp and all that stuff, But this, you're just working from your home. This is my home. I'm working out of my home, and I have a square footage that I'm using. I'm working between my dining room and my living room. There's like this big area. It's like an open floor plan. I got this big area right here between my dining room and floor and living room. So I thought, why don't I just set up an office here? That way I can observe Brian. He's my 8-year-old son. Because during COVID, his daycare was closed. So he was like sitting over there playing on his tablet or doing his work, and I had to like watch him. And my husband was working over here in the dining room. And so we were all together just in here. And so I thought, why don't I just, work from home and then I don't have much costs. And I think so it's like a challenge to get started, was actually doing the research to see what's selling. Cause you don't know, like you put something out there, like say you're selling on Etsy, which has a built-in marketplace with millions of people go to Etsy already because they do lots of marketing. So all these people are already there. It's like a built-in audience, but you got to know what these people are going to buy. So you got to do lots of research. Like there's these tools, like I use Sales Samurai and Everbee. There's also eRank. These are Etsy tools. So you got to do some market research to see what products will even sell. Because if you put anything out there, like say I just like stuck something out there like a cat planner, like I don't know if that's going to sell. Like I got to do research to see, if other people are selling it or if other people are making sales, all that.
Yep, exactly. Which is really just a little bit of your time. I mean, okay, yes, you can sign up for subscription services that help you pull those trends and see the rankings and identify keywords and all that. But, those are fairly minimal, especially in relation to, like you mentioned, a brick and mortar business and having a staff and those kind of things. So it's pretty minimal. Harry, how about you? It sounds like you're diversifying enough such that you don't have any, there's not a risk to your business should something fundamentally change. But, in terms of all of that, do you see, are there other risks that maybe we're not seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think when people start going down this path, and people obviously have, I've been on other shows and I've talked about this. I even spoke about this at a podcast movement. I was able to give a talk about, what the journey I've had with the vertical farming podcast. And naturally, a lot of people came up to me after that talk. You have to pick, if you're going to go this path specifically with a niche, it should be something that you have an interest in. I know it sounds obvious, but if you're going to be in this for the long haul, is this a topic that you can hang with? Because you have to, go a bit deep and you have to be consistent with content. And, luckily we have the in-house production, but you have to think about who do you need as your support team? If you are going to do, a podcast, for example, do you have someone who's going to help you with the production on a consistent basis, which we do, but you have to think about, how visible do you want to be in this niche? And like I said, because we've, worked with the the caliber of the guests is high, and then the fact that I'm getting out there. So I'm investing my time, and for what's happening with a lot of these conferences is they'll become a sponsor of the podcast, so they'll pay for my ticket. So I literally have to just show up at the conference. And for the international ones, it was my previous sponsor, Cultivated. He texted me like on the phone. He said, "Do you want to go to Dubai?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "We're doing an indoor farming conference and we've built a pavilion." And because I have that visibility and I'm speaking to CEOs, so you really have to think about it strategically, because like, where am I going to play in this space? And do I want to make myself known in this space and make some time to go to these conferences, to meet people in person? And that's not an approach for everyone, but I think it's helpful to think about. And then also to have some diligence in how you do sponsor outreach, because that is something that you have to keep doing, as sponsors wind down. And I typically try to book them for what I call a season, which is 13 weeks and a quarter. And again, coming from that marketing background, that's how marketing departments plan budgets. They'll plan something for next year. So they're already looking, they may have money they haven't spent at the end of this year that needs to get spent. I remember the finance team coming in at E-Trade and telling the marketing team, "Hey, if you don't use it, you lose it." And so there's budgets that are tied to quarters and stuff. So you have to sort of know this and ask, if I did the download numbers and did what's known as CPM, cost per mil, and the mil is a Roman numeral for 1,000, the going rate is $25. So, they would typically, and if we get a couple of thousand downloads per episode, that's $50 a week. That's $200 a month. And I'm charging $15K for a season. So you can see really the discrepancy in those two numbers. If I'm not offering people, hey, depending on the downloads, that works for like the Joe Rogans, where you've got millions and millions of downloads, obviously. But for shows that are more niche, you have to go with the per episode model, and that's going to be better for you, because you just get more value, and you can build those relationships with your sponsors. Like I mentioned, we have Indoor AgCon, which is a conference that I'm attending. So we do a revenue share, and so it's really just coming back to your question about risks. Is this something that has legs? Number one, have you picked a niche that's profitable? Because I could have done maybe beekeeping, but the investment is not there from companies that are willing to invest in this space. So it's really do your homework and pick a niche that you have an interest in, that is growing, where there's a lot of visibility, and where you can, carve out a niche for yourself, I think is really important.
How was the process for you of finding the people that help you do what you do today? Find your team?
Yes. Yeah. Similar to Becky, I used just an online service to do that first outreach. And the one she mentioned is a good one as well. I'm working with a new operations person right now, because we're looking to scale the agency, and I found her on Upwork. So it's really just a function of writing a really detailed job description, and talk about your culture in the description a lot, because you want people that are going to be a fit, and saying, this is what I believe in, this is who we serve, and this is what lights me up. And so, that way you find someone who's a fit for you. And there are, one of my coaches who's helping me scale my agency, he's got a team that some of those folks are in the Philippines, and they work US hours. So there is a contingent of, Filipino workers that, because of the culture there's probably like a night and day, group of folks that actually, they probably go sleep at turn of day and they go out at night,
right?
because they're, or vice versa, because they're working during the U.S. hours. So it's really just a function of taking the time to write a job description that explains clearly, and then just having a 90-day probation period, I've found is really helpful. And then again, shout out to one of my earlier coaches, Alex Sharfin, who's helps with operations. But this idea of like a 90-day trial, and I'm meeting with my new person like almost every day, and it's really critical in those early days, because they feel lost, and you're throwing SOPs at them and videos at them and saying, do this, and it feels like, as a business owner, I'm sure Becky can relate to this, is just when you get so excited, you might have some help, and you start giving them everything, and then you got to really like temper it, because you're like, you don't want to overwhelm them and have them feel like, oh, this is too much, I don't understand any of this. So it's almost more work in the beginning when you hire someone, because you have to do your job and you have to train them to do your job. So it really feels like, wow, it's like I'm even busier now, but you have to see the end goal to see that if I get this right and I train them properly, then that workload for me will eventually like go down, and I can focus on more of this idea of working on the business instead of in the business.
Yes, definitely. I love that. Something else I did want to touch with you guys both on is the time element of things. How much time, Harry, are you spending in and on your business? I think most of you are full time.
Yeah, a bit more in than I'd like, but thankfully with the agency, we've developed a routine and a process for how shows get recorded. So from a recording perspective, I like using, tools like a scheduling tool. We use SavvyCal to book our appointments. They get prompted with a list of questions. We ask all their socials, their headshots. So we're doing everything very efficiently. We're grabbing all the information. And then when it comes down to the interview, similar to this, we use a tool called Squadcast.fm, which is a remote recording tool for podcasters. And we have the interview, and then it gets recorded and saved. And essentially the team takes it on from there. I just let them know I'll record an intro and an outro introducing the guest. And then we use Slack for internal communication. I said, hey, go ahead and the episode is ready. So they see that stuff is in the queue and they just handle it. They create the graphics, the elements, the video clips. They post it on the client's website. We prepare an email to the guest. And so that workflow thankfully happens and is on automatic because of, the experience we've had producing all those shows. But it's really now opens me up to think about where are there other opportunities where we can do it now, maybe additional shows in this niche and create like a podcast network. So we're trying now to use that one platform and the visibility of the Vertical Farming Podcast and now this new partnership under the AgTech Media Group umbrella to see what else we could do. Just even thinking what Becky was saying about ideas for products, you just branded T-shirts on vertical farming, just pushing ourselves out of the niche, a directory, a paid directory, a job board. So we're adding these places that have become stickier and stickier for people when they come for the podcast, but they find out all these other opportunities as well.
So are you putting in a pretty full week of like a, 30, 40 hour week when you're
it's a mix right now because a lot of what I'm doing right now is with the two coaches that I'm working on is now I'm focused more on my time on setting aside time to look for opportunities where I can build and or scale my business in a way that actually has me my goal for next year is to double my business and spend half as much time on it. So the key is really finding those right people. So more of what I'm doing right now is really this onboarding where I'm spending a lot of time with training these people, writing the SOPs. We're switching over to a new project management system called ClickUp. So it's a lot of like learning curve stuff. And thankfully, we're heading into a slower season right now. So the goal is to really, buckle down and within the next couple of months, put us in a position where I can then focus more of my time on the sales, the lead gen, the stuff that I like doing, talking to prospects and stuff like that. So
yeah, those are great. I mean, we're in a few different coaching programs, masterminds, things like that. But there's a concept in one called Strategic Coach. That's your unique ability, and that's where you need to be playing and want to play. And that's definitely the goal is to spend more of your time in that. Becky, how about you? What's your workload look like on a week to week basis?
Well, I try to focus on my zone of genius, which is like creating courses. And I love to email. I do all my own email customer service. I just prefer that. I just don't trust that with somebody else because I've actually emailed other people and they're using somebody else's their email service and they just have really horrible service and that really turns me off as a customer. So I thought I don't want that for me because I'm just going to take care of my own support. But eventually I might outsource that. But yeah, I do my own email support. I write an email every single day to my list. I have 3 lists. Like one list I email every day, one list I email 3 times a week, and one list I email every Friday. But I might change it up where I email everybody every single day. I just don't know. But I email a lot and also create courses during the day. And any other work I hand off to my VA, and I'll just make a Trello, job in there. And then I'll maybe film a video because that's what Harry was saying. Like so at first, your workload is kind of double because you're also assigning tasks to your employee. But I advise like as you're doing the work, film yourself. So that way you have a video of how to do it, and then it's done. You never have to do it again. You just give it off to your VA, and if they have questions, you can just answer questions. But it's a video. Like a lot of people can just watch what you're doing and learn. They can learn anything.
Yes, exactly. 100%. I mean, that's something we learned early on as well. As the first time you train somebody, make sure and document it. Videos are great, all those things, because there is a lot of turnover. People ghost you, or you want to find somebody different, or something like that. And so it's great to have that just already in the bank, and you can pull that out.
The other thing that I found that is helpful is to really think about when you are beginning to work with folks, the three different ways you can work with them. Naturally, with the agency, we have, which is done for you. And then from a podcast perspective, I have do-it-yourself, DIY. And so it's just a course they can follow, self-study course. But recently, the one that I've putting a bit more time into is this done with you option. So this is a cohort-based option. So now there's a tool we use called School, SKOOL.com, which is a community-based tool. And now they're in the group, they ask questions in the group, and then I have an office hours once a week on a Tuesday, and it's just 1 hour, and anyone from the community can join, and they start asking questions, and I'm like, oh, I should probably make a video about that. And so I'll make a video, I drop it into the classroom. So now it's almost like content on demand, as opposed to sometimes you make these elaborate courses and you're like, you spend so much time on them, and I've been guilty of that as well, and you're just making what you think people might want. So now with this cohort approach, it's been helpful, because I'll do the office hours, and someone will say, hey, can you go a bit deeper and show me a video on how to do this specifically as it relates to the podcast or sponsorships or something like that? And I'm like, sure, that's helpful. And I'm sure if you're asking for it, someone else is probably going to need it as well. So this idea of content on demand has been really interesting for me with this new approach.
Oh, nice.
And in that way, you make sure that you provide what people are interested to hear.
Right. Yeah, and it's an interesting model, and it's one of the other coaches that I'm working with. His name is James Kemp. But what he does is now, because he's creating this content, it creates this little micro content. So you'll have like a 5-minute video or a 10-minute video on a specific topic. So what I've been learning and some training on is you offer those up at a really small price point, like $100, and it's the stuff that you've already. So you're basically going through and seeing what you've already created, and so that's good from a marketing funnel perspective, because you can offer it up and say, "Hey, I've got these 4 trainings I just did," and then you offer it up for $100, and it's an easy way for people to like easily consume it. But then if you build the funnel properly, then you're like, "Oh, by the way, I create videos like this in our group, so maybe you want to join the group." So you're creating content that you can then use later to do like these little, easy ways into your world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of different ways to run your support network. I like all of these. We have a sideshow running here of teaching people how to use VA. So back to the Fight Club. What final thoughts do we have here? I guess one thing I think we touched on, but maybe it's not super concrete, is like the monetization potential. I don't remember if we were recording or not, but Becky, I know we were talking about you went from a pretty unknown blog to 10,000, 30,000 some months between. I guess that's a combination between product and ad revenue or affiliate type things. Is that a kind of total thing? But
that's the digital products alone, but also earn money from sponsorships, ad income, and affiliate marketing on the blog.
Okay. So
it's good to diversify your income.
Definitely. Yeah. And it sounds like it's also, there's not really a ceiling on it, right? I mean, it's just as many products as you can come up with that are in demand, advertising. Okay. I mean, there's a.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like I don't run any ads. It's all organic growth. I did try to run ads this month, but like a couple months ago, and I just didn't have much luck. I just ended up making what I put in. I didn't really, get much, So I was like, this isn't really worth it, because I just been organically growing all these years.
Is
like
that when you say you were running ads, is that to get more traffic or more?
To get like people to purchase products or to get, or to get lead generation, like get on my email list.
Mm-hmm. And Harry, what about you in the podcast space? I mean, it sounds like it's probably predominantly advertising driven.
Yeah, a lot of it is sponsorship driven. So that was the key, that was the focus when I started it. But obviously, as I was thinking about other ways, that's sort of why I was grabbing those URLs. And now we're doing an inventory of all the URLs we have available with this new partner. But it starts with sponsorship, building those relationships. A couple of companies in that space, saw that we produce podcasts, so they became clients of my podcast agency. So, it's these opportunities to just continuously reference other things you're working on. And now that we're doing this merger, we're looking at ideas of, like we mentioned, the directory. It's a really common thing, and it's something that I've done in the podcast space. I created a directory called the Podosphere. It's just a model where if you're going niche, then look at the other ways where you can service that niche. And I think this idea of public directories is a really popular one nowadays. And there's WordPress plugins that let you do this pretty easily. But the idea is really, can you get companies, a couple of hundred companies paying you $100 a year just for a listing, premium listing, and then the top ones can pay you maybe $1,000 a year, and then that'll start to add up because that's recurring revenue. And so it's really interesting to start thinking about that now that we've established this, this baseline of visibility with the show, and now this partnership. So how can we create things, similar to Becky's model, other products that can begin to service this niche? And so on the one end, the podcast is continuing to give me the visibility, so that I can then offer, these other options to people who are interested. And the other thing that's important is, because I'm interviewing CEOs and founders, like I created a Substack where I just email them, hey, it's all my past guests. So I maintain that relationship, and I'm saying, hey, we're looking for sponsors. Hey, we've just done this merger. So it's a nice way, even from a networking perspective, to just grow that visibility in the space, because you're developing these one-to-one relationships with these CEOs and founders, which is pretty powerful. So if you're going to do the work to have this, these conversations, and again, I'm leaning into my strength, which is podcasting, and the takeaway for the viewer, and Becky's, really sounds like she's a really great writer. So she's leaning into her strengths as well. So, if you are going to go down one of these paths, like lean into something that you're comfortable with to start. So you're not like, I'm just now flexing my writing muscle. I do a Saturday newsletter called A Life Worth Living. And it's just, I'm sharing my journey. And which I found was beautiful about that. It's not really a marketing newsletter. It's really like, hey, I went to this men's retreat. Hey, I had a session with my therapist. Hey, I think I might have ADHD. Like, just being open about, like, I just turned 53 recently, and just sharing my life journey, because I always feel like we're on this ladder, and I'm learning from people just a rung ahead of me, and I'm helping people who are a rung below me. And then so it's really that dynamic. I'm not going to be like learning from Tony Robbins, and I'm not going to be teaching someone who's literally like, hey, what's a microphone? So you just teach people within that range of like who you can help. But I really believe that everyone's just, they're tired of like the people who are putting on a facade of like, this is my perfect life and this is my IG moments. And just, the more you can be realistic about your own journey. And that's what I've learned from podcasting. Like, if you go into a restaurant, there's 100 people in the restaurant, there's 100 stories there. You just have to be naturally curious. And so all these pieces have come to, to play for me. And that's why I really love this medium so much. And obviously we're on a podcast as well, so I'm sure you can speak to the power of it, but it's been helpful for me to just have that continuous platform to, continuous to hone and practice, sharing my story, my voice.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it is, again, we circle back to, your unique ability or your zone of genius. I mean, those are kind of haughty words and phrases, but it is so true. I mean, especially if you're going to do something for a bit of time, you should like it, right? If I don't like writing, it's not good to be something that's going to be writing centric. Or if I am uncomfortable speaking with people at this level, podcast is maybe not the right avenue, or things like that. So yeah, I love the advice. And the branching out as well, just to share a story. I mean, there is power in authenticity. We live in such an inauthentic world in some aspects with social media and different public platforms and things like that, that it's really nice when you get, that's why I love podcasts myself. As far as a consumer, I just love to hear people sharing their stories, and especially long form. I enjoy a lot more than some of the others, because you get a depth of insight into people and they open up a bit more, and it just resonates more with me. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, long podcasts, I can't do them, but it's different. But all right, any final thoughts? What about you? Any wrap-up questions?
No, I just wanted to ask both of you quickly to share what would be your number one advice for people that want to start their own business or want to follow their dreams or passion. What would be your number one advice? Becky,
I recommend you just get started. Don't put it off. You keep putting it off, procrastinating, it's never going to happen. Like, that's what I was doing for a long time with Mom Beach, like I kept putting on my to-do list, oh, you got to do something with Mom Beach. You haven't doing anything with it. You're just like posting like every month or so, not doing anything with it. But I just kept putting it off. I would say just get started today. You have a passion. You have so much to contribute to this world. You have your own skills. Like even if you've worked at like a dead end job your whole life, like you did skills in that job. There's something you can put towards yourself. To make your own money.
That's beautiful.
How about you, Harry?
Yeah, I would echo what Becky said. It's this idea of taking imperfect action, just 1% better every day. And, what can you do today and to have a better, version than you'd had yesterday? Like I have this one of these intentions and affirmations I do every morning. And it's just like, today is better than yesterday and tomorrow will be better than today. So, but you have to actively do something as well. You can't just like sit there on the cushion
Wish
and
it into
expect.
being. Yeah.
Yeah. It's some of it is affirmations and law of attraction stuff, but you actually have to do the things and put yourself out of your comfort zone and invest in yourself. One of the biggest, when I look back, the thought of spending $1,500 a month for a coach, back in 2014 was just like crazy. Like I was like, thankfully I had a little money saved over for my 9-to-5 job, but I was like, this can't last, and I have to like really like light that fire. And I think that's why I like the idea of always working with a coach. I'm working with a new coach, and that's like another investment of money, another $1,000 a month. And when you see that debit come out of your account, you're like, I better put these lessons to use, and I better, get these things going, because it's like, I want them, and it lights a fire under you. But you have to really have a passion for continuous self-improvement, understand what it is you don't know, where you can get help, and do the things that, get the help. So you're focusing on the tasks that you're really good at. There's 4 types of tasks. Those are incompetent at, you're competent at, you're excellent at, and then you're genius. Obviously, those first 2 you shouldn't be doing anyway. And it's like, there's people that have like people that come to clean their house, or something. People get their, some people get their, if you live in the city, you get your laundry done or something like that. Get your car washed,
right.
But the excellent tasks are things that where you are pretty good at, but not an expert. And I learned this lesson years ago. I was trying to fix something on my website. Maybe I should have called Becky, but I was trying to fix an image on my sidebar, and it took me hours. I couldn't figure it out. And then finally I asked a WordPress friend of mine, and he literally fixed it in 5 minutes. And I was like, okay.
I'm guilty of doing that as well.
That's your zone of genius. You should be getting paid, premium to just get that done faster than I could. And so that really is always resonating with me. Like what's my zone? What's my genius task that only I know how to do really, really well? So it's important. One of my coaches asked me a question one time. She's like, what are you best in the world at? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting question, because you feel like there's a lot of ego behind that. But recently, because I'm going down a more spiritual journey and I'm doing podcasting, it took a little while to get to this point. But then now it's when I'm asked that question, I tell people I'm the cosmic conduit for awakened souls ready to transmit their message to a global audience. Okay. And so it's the type of one-liner that attracts or immediately repels people pretty quickly. And it's on my LinkedIn too. I put it on LinkedIn. Audience quickly. Yeah, it's on a LinkedIn, and people see it. They're like, "Tell me more about that. Like, what are you doing?" Like, and I'm like, "Okay, let's talk." And it ties into podcasting and finding your voice. But I think having that idea of like what because people try to be all things for everyone, and eventually, like, you're too general, and people don't know what to turn to you for. So I think having something that you're a specialist in, I think works really well for letting people know, like, oh, you're the person I need to talk to specifically about, like, writing prolific content and selling products and creating your own niches, in terms of what Becky does, it's clear like she's an expert in that field, so you would want to talk to her if you had any interest in that.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. There is beauty in that clarity. Clarity is power, as they say. All right. Well, Lidge and I are going to take 60 seconds here to confer, and we'll be right back with an announcement on the champion. All right. Well, we've talked things over, and both of these are awesome business models. I love them and they're very similar, even though they're very different. They're taking an idea, niching it in, scaling, and then once you get to scale, further branching out and growing those. In this particular matchup, we're going to champion Becky Beach and her digital products. I think there's a lot of lower risk and just a ton of upside there. And so, but I do think both of these are great for anybody. And as we've talked about during the show, just lean into your talents and leverage the power of others to do the other things that you need done. So great stuff. Good job. We appreciate you both for being on. We typically wrap up these matchups with a bit of gratitude. So we're certainly grateful for both of you giving your time to us and the audience for coming on the show and sharing your nuggets of wisdom. But Becky, any particular person or persons that you'd like to share an expression of gratitude that's maybe helped you along your way or helps you today?
Yeah, like Harry said, it's always good to have like a business coach. So I just want to shout out to my business coach, Julie Chanel. Like she also runs FG Funnels. Like she's been a really inspirational person that's helped me along the way.
That's great. Thank you very much, Harry.
Yeah, I think about everyone that's helped me along this journey, and essentially my clients and my students. Right, I wouldn't have a business without them.
Sure.
The listeners to my show. So I'm just thinking all the people that have contributed to the content, benefited from the content, have given feedback. They really light you up. Especially when you're doing this. To Becky's point, at home, sometimes you feel like, is anyone listening? Is anyone reading? And when you do get that feedback, it really is helpful to keep you moving, keep you motivated. So anyone who's engaged with any of my content over the years, I'm really grateful to them.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again to you both, and congratulations to you both for just following your path and staying on the path and staying open to let that evolve as it does, and taking an active role. So,
and Becky, if people want to reach out to you, what is the best way to find you?
Oh, you can go to my blog, mombeach.com, and then that lists all like my coaching site and my PLR site there, and also my shop. So you can just go to mombeach.com. It's probably easy to remember. Okay. Just head over there.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes as well, so everybody will have that.
And how about you, Harry?
I think the best place would be harryduran.com. I've been making more. That's that weekly newsletter that goes out. It's called Life Worth Living, and it's the start of the journey. And then what I do in that newsletter is I was like, this is what I created this week, and I'll mention the podcast episode, and I'll mention, if I put up a DJ mix on SoundCloud, just kind of just showing this all around, just how some of these other interests that I have, and if people like that, then they can start to look at, oh, you do podcasting, and so they'll learn about the other things through that journey as well.
Terrific. Well, thanks again to you both. We certainly had a blast having you on the show, getting to know a bit about your business models. I'm inspired to continue to grow our podcast as well as get some digital products out there. So thanks again, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For those of you tuning in, we thank you so much for investing your time with us on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. We certainly had a blast, received some knockout insights, all while learning something new. And we hope you did too.
If you had fun, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you watch or listen.
Lydia and I truly believe the beauty of cash flow is having your money fight for you instead of you having to fight for money. So whether it's one of these methods or something else, we encourage you to dream big and take action. See you next time.